Have you ever considered the paperwork, the sheer administrative burden of omnipotence? We think of the gods on Olympus in their moments of drama, thunderbolts thrown, tempests raised, jealousies ignited. But what of the long hours between epics? The quiet afternoons when the nectar is just slightly too warm, the ambrosia has gone a bit soft, and there's nothing pressing on the divine docket. The truth is, for every myth of Herculean labor or Trojan War, there are 100 smaller, quieter tales. Tales of minor nymphs who were exceptionally good at presiding over a single, very specific type of moss. Stories of gods given portfolios so niche that even the other gods forgot what they did. These are the foundations of the mythic world, the bureaucratic glue that holds the cosmos together. They are not exciting. They are, in fact, profoundly boring. And that is why they are perfect for us now. Let us turn away from the clamor of heroes and focus instead on the quiet hum of divine routine. Let the minutiae of eternity lull you. Let the catalog of insignificant duties become a gentle wave, washing over your awake mind, pulling it out to the deep, calm sea of sleep. Our first point of focus is a goddess who truly understood the assignment of being underwhelming. Eris. No, not that Eris. Not the Eris of the golden apple, the one who sparked the Trojan War with a single piece of fruit inscribed to the fairest. That was a rare moment of initiative, a career peak she would never again approach. I speak of her daily, more fundamental nature. Eris was the goddess of strife, discord, and rivalry. But strife is a broad category. The discord that starts a 10-year war is flashy, but what about the petty, low-grade strife that permeates daily existence? This was Eris's true domain. She was present in the faint, nagging resentment you feel when a colleague's pen taps just too rhythmically on a quiet afternoon. She was the spirit in the simmering, unspoken disagreement over whose turn it was to clean the griffin stables on Olympus. She presided over the minor friction of a chitin sleeve catching on a throne's ornament, over the slight imbalance of a perfectly set table when one goblet is a millimeter out of place. Hesiod, in his Works and Days, makes a crucial distinction. He speaks of two strifes. One is blameworthy, the warlike kind. The other is the one is far kinder to men. She stirs up even the shiftless to toil. This is Eris as a divine motivator of low-stakes competition. She is the feeling that makes a potter look at his neighbor's perfectly adequate pot and think, I could make one with a slightly smoother rim. She is the catalyst for the fishing contest between two bored satyrs on a Tuesday afternoon. Her work was constant, microscopic, and essential to the slow grind of mortal and immortal life. No temples were built to this Eris. No grand sacrifices were made. She was simply there, in the background hum of mild irritation and gentle one-upmanship, a goddess whose greatest achievement was going largely unnoticed. Picture her now, not throwing a golden apple, but patiently weaving a faint thread of discontent into the hem of a cloud, or adjusting the atmospheric pressure ever so slightly to ensure two travelers might bicker about the direction of the wind. A constant, low-grade divine presence, as unnoticeable as the weight of the air, and just as pervasive. This leads us naturally to a consideration of divine siblings. Everyone knows about Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, but families are large and attention is uneven. Consider their sister, Hestia. Her domain was the hearth, the fireplace, the home fire. Her symbol was a flame, but not a wild, consuming blaze, a contained, circular, perpetual burn. She was the firstborn of Kronos and Rhea, and also the last to be relinquished from his stomach. She was, in a sense, the alpha and the omega of that particular digestive ordeal. Yet she asked for very little. When the gods divided their realms, she requested no province, no territory. She asked only for the center. Not the center of power, but the literal, physical center of the home, and by extension, the community. She became the goddess of the hearth, the heart of the household. Her worship was not dramatic. It involved no ecstatic rites on mountaintops. It was a daily, quiet practice. The first offering of any meal, a bit of wine, a morsel of food, was tossed into her fire. When a new child was born, it was carried around the hearth to be presented to Hestia. When a family moved, they would carry coals from their old hearth to light the new one, transporting Hestia's essence with them. She was so central, so fundamentally there, that she became almost invisible. In the Roman pantheon, as Vesta, she had priestesses, the Vestal Virgins, whose sole duty was to ensure her sacred fire in the forum never went out. The punishment for letting it extinguish was severe, and the punishment for a Vestal breaking her vow of chastity was burial alive. But the duty itself was one of profound, repetitive monotony. Tending, watching, feeding the flame. A vigil of unparalleled boredom, stretching for decades. The essence of Hestia is not in a story of adventure, but in the story of absence, of a goddess so synonymous with constancy that she has no myths of her own. She appears in no tumultuous love affairs, fights no monsters. She simply is. The quiet crackle in the background of every other myth. The stable point around which chaos whirls. Focus on that image now. A single, steady flame in a dark room. Not growing, not diminishing. Just burning. A circle of light and gentle heat. Constant. Predictable. Boring. A divine mandate of mundane stability. While we are on the subject of overlooked siblings, we must venture to the sea. Poseidon is, of course, the god of the seas, earthquakes, and horses, a volatile, powerful figure. But the ocean is vast, and one god cannot manage all its portfolios. This is where Triton enters the narrative. Triton, son of Poseidon and Amphitrite. His role? Herald, messenger. He is the conch shell blower of the deep. His primary mythic duty is to appear, usually in the wake of his father's passage, and blow on a great conch shell to calm the waves. That is it. He is the divine cleanup crew for oceanic tantrums. Imagine the scene. Poseidon, in a fury over some slight, raises a colossal storm. Ships splinter, sailors drown, islands are lashed. Then, as his anger subsides, he gives a nod. Triton, who has been waiting patiently off to the side with his giant seashell, lifts it to his lips and blows a deep, resonant note. The waves settle from frenzied peaks to a gentle, rolling swell. His entire existential purpose is to be the undo button for his father's meteorological rages. Later poets describe a whole race of Tritons, merman-like creatures, but the original Triton is just a guy with a very specific, repetitive job. He is rarely the subject of his own stories. In one minor tale, he plays a trick on the Argonauts, but it is a forgettable interlude. Mostly, he is a background figure in vase paintings and sculptures, blowing his shell, his fishtail half submerged. He is the embodiment of a specialized, monotonous task. No one writes epics about the sound technician who lowers the curtain after the play, but the play cannot properly end without him. Triton is that sound technician, a divine functionary of the deep. Picture him now, floating in the silent, dark pressure of the post-storm sea, waiting for his cue. The water is still turbulent. Debris floats past. He checks his conch for moisture, gives it a practiced shake. A distant rumbling sound, his father's retreating chariot. He nods to himself. Time to work. He lifts the shell. The note begins, low and long, vibrating through the water column, a sonic signal for calm. A routine he has performed 10,000 times, a boring, essential piece of oceanic maintenance. From the sea's herald, we drift to its less glamorous inhabitants. The Nereids, the 50 daughters of Nereus, the old man of the sea, are often depicted as a cheerful chorus, riding dolphins and assisting sailors. But 50 is a lot of daughters. Surely they couldn't all have been charismatic. Catalogue poets like Hesiod, who felt a deep need to list everything, gave them all names: Galatea, Thetis, Amphitrite, and so on. But for every Thetis, who was mother to Achilles, there was a, say, Proto, or Eucrante, or Sao. Sao's specific dominion, according to some fragments, was the safety of sailors, a noble cause, but rather broad. Or consider Galeen, whose purview was the calm sea, not the sea in general, just the calm parts. Her entire divine responsibility was to preside over flat, glassy, uneventful water. Can you imagine a more tedious portfolio? While her sisters might be summoned for rescue or to guide a hero, Galeen's moment was the absence of event. She was the goddess of maritime boredom itself, a perfect, unruffled expanse of blue stretching to the horizon, where nothing moves but the slow, hypnotic swell. A sea so calm it becomes hypnotic, a divine expression of nothing happening for hours and days. This leads us to consider the land and its own plethora of minor spirits. Every grove, spring, river, and tree could have a nymph attached. The dryads and hamadryads were tree nymphs. Their lives were inextricably tied to their specific tree. A hamadryad was born with a tree and died if it was cut down. Think of the existential reality of that. Your consciousness is linked to a single oak or poplar. Your sensory experience is largely photosynthetic. You feel the sun on your leaves, the sap moving in spring, the deep anchor of roots in soil. Your excitement for the year is the formation of acorns. Your drama is an unusually hungry caterpillar. Your social life consists of whispering via rustling leaves to the maple next door. For centuries. The ultimate slow living. No travel, no great loves, unless a passing god took interest, which usually ended badly. No change of scenery, just the slow growth of bark, the cyclical drop of leaves, the patient waiting for rain. A life of profound, vegetative stillness. To be a tree nymph was to be an expert in the art of staying in one place, a master of quiet endurance. The original hobby was just being. existing as part of a fixed, slow-moving point in the landscape. If you were a nymph of a particularly common, unremarkable tree, say a scrub oak on a rocky hillside, no poets would ever sing of you. No heroes would rest in your shade. You would simply experience the turn of millennia, one slow season at a time, watching the moss grow on your north side. A perfect model of quiet, arboreal tedium. But perhaps the pinnacle of divine boredom is not found in a nymph, but in a god who represents the very concept of passage without event. His name is Aristeus, a minor god, a son of Apollo, associated with rustic knowledge, cheese-making, beekeeping, olive cultivation, and the herding of cattle. He is a god of practical pastoral skills, the kind of knowledge that isn't discovered in a flash of inspiration, but accumulated over generations of trial and error, passed down from parent to child in 1,000 unremarkable moments. His myths are few. In one, his bees all die, and he must undergo a series of rituals, sacrificing cattle, letting them decompose, to generate a new swarm from their carcasses. It's a bizarre, procedural myth about apiary troubleshooting. It reads like a divine manual. But Aristeus's true nature is that of a divine civil servant of the countryside. He didn't cause the harvest. He oversaw the techniques that made it reliable. He didn't invent cheese. He presided over the slow, careful process of curdling, pressing, and aging. His worship would have been the muttered prayers of a shepherd watching for signs of bloat in his sheep, or a beekeeper carefully smoking a hive. His domain was the quiet, repetitive labor that sustains life, far from the halls of power or the fields of battle. He was the god of knowing exactly how long to press the curds for a particular type of cheese, a deity of such specific, unglamorous expertise that his very presence is a balm against excitement. Think of the making of cheese. Milk, warmed, rennet, added, waiting, the slow separation, the gentle cutting of the curd, more waiting, the draining, the pressing, the long, dark, silent aging in a cave. For months, nothing happens, but within that nothing, transformation occurs. Aristeus is the spirit in that cool, dark, uneventful cave, the patron of patient process, the divine embodiment of wait and see. We have wandered through minor gods and spirits, but what of the heroes? The age of heroes is marked by grand quests, the labors of Heracles, the voyage of the Argonauts. But for every Argonaut who was a son of a god or a famed warrior, there were others. Men listed on the roster because someone had to row. Take, for instance, Bootes. An Argonaut, yes. His claim to fame? When the ship passed the island of the Sirens, whose song lured sailors to their doom, Orpheus played his lyre to drown them out. Most of the crew, tied to the mast or focused on rowing, resisted. Bootes, however, was so enchanted he leaped overboard and began swimming toward the deadly singers. He was saved not by his own strength or wit, but because Aphrodite, for reasons unknown, took pity on him, plucked him from the water, and made him her lover in Sicily. That is his entire story. He is the crewmate who almost died because he lacked basic impulse control and was saved by arbitrary divine whim. After his rescue, he fades from myth. He didn't win a great prize. He didn't perform a brave deed. He was essentially a liability who got a lucky break. His legacy is one of near failure, of being the weakest link in a poetic moment. A hero only by the broadest possible association. The story of Bootes is not one to inspire song, but perhaps a mild cautionary tale told my sailing masters. Don't be a Bootes. Keep rowing. Then there are the kings.
Not every king was an Agamemnon or Odysseus. Many were local rulers, mentioned only in passing, their reigns notable only for the absence of event. A prime example is Periphas, a legendary king of Attica before Cecrops. He was so pious and just that his people began to worship him as a god. This angered Zeus, who came down to incinerate him with a thunderbolt. But Apollo, impressed by Periphas's virtue, intervened. He asked Zeus to spare him. Zeus agreed, but transformed Periphas and his wife into birds. Periphas became an eagle, and Zeus, in a strange twist, made him the king of all birds and allowed him to guard his own sacred scepter. A peculiar end. But consider the reign itself. It was so uniformly good, so consistently uneventful in its justice, that it provoked a divine crisis. His story is a myth about the dangers of being too boringly competent. His life's work was maintaining a perfectly run, peaceful kingdom. No wars, no scandals, no dramatic innovations, just good, dull governance. So dull that the only myth attached to him is about how he stopped being a king altogether and became a bird, a bureaucratic reshuffling by the cosmos. His human existence was so devoid of narrative hooks that the mythmakers had to literally transform him into something else to have a story to tell. This phenomenon extends to objects and places. The Aegis, Zeus's shield or breastplate, often associated with the hide of the goat Amalthea who nursed him, is famous. But what of his other items? He had a set of golden scales, used occasionally to weigh fates in battle. Imagine the life of a divine scale. Eons spent in a storage vault on Olympus, brought out maybe once a generation for a quick measurement. Is Hector's fate heavier than Achilles today? A slight tilt. Interesting. Then back to the vault. The sheer inactivity of it. Or consider the caduceus, the staff of Hermes. It's a symbol of commerce and messengers now. But think of the downtime. Hermes was busy, but the staff itself? It spent long hours leaning against a cloud or propped by a doorway while Hermes delivered a message. An object of immense symbolic power, experiencing crushing mundanity for 99% of its existence.
Even the great artifacts of heroes had boring afterlives. After the fall of Troy, the spoils were divided. What happened to, say, the lesser shield of a minor Trojan captain? It wasn't taken by a great hero. It was probably catalogued, put on a ship, shipped back to some Greek kingdom, placed in a treasury, and forgotten. It might have been melted down for coinage a century later. Its mythic journey ended not with a bang, but with an inventory list. It passed from the drama of war into the silent, dusty record-keeping of history.
We must also talk about the Titanomachy, the great 10-year war between the Titans and the Olympian gods. We hear of the climactic battles, the hurling of mountains. But what about the supply lines? The forging of divine weapons was handled by the Cyclopes and Hephaestus. But who managed the procurement of celestial bronze? Who organized the logistics of ambrosia shipments to the front? Who was the divine quartermaster, ensuring that every nymph and lesser god had a functional spear? There must have been a god or titan of logistics, of inventory management, a deity whose sacred scrolls listed the number of thunderbolt tips in stock, the count of divine chariot axles. His name is lost to time because chroniclers of war rarely celebrate the accountants. But without him, the war could not have been fought. His contribution was utterly essential and completely devoid of glory. He spent the war in a tent or a cloud pavilion, checking lists by the light of a low-burning lamp. The fate of the cosmos hinged on his accurate tally of shield straps. Picture him, late into the divine night, the sounds of distant battle a mere rumble. He rubs his eyes. The column for lances of celestial iron isn't balancing with the issued receipts. There's a discrepancy of 3. He sighs, a sound like rustling parchment. He must find the error before the morning requisition. This is his Titanomachy, a war fought with ledgers and tallies.
And after the war, the cleanup, the imprisoning of the Titans in Tartarus, who was in charge of that? Setting up the bronze gates, arranging the perpetual guards, the hecatyres, the administrative work of damnation, filing each Titan into an appropriate cell block, processing the paperwork for eternal imprisonment. Name, Koios. Crime, rebellion against the Olympian order. Sentence, perpetual incarceration. Next, name, Krios. Crime, rebellion. Sentence, perpetual incarceration. A soul-crushing, if you'll pardon the term, repetitive task. But someone had to do it. A divine caseworker for the damned.
The world of the dead, Hades' realm, is itself a study in organized monotony. We think of the dramatic judgments, the punishments of Sisyphus, Tantalus, and the Danaids, but they are the exceptions, the standout cases in an eternity of shades. For the vast majority of dead souls, the experience was different. They would arrive, be ferried by Charon, pass by Cerberus, and then drift. They would go to the Asphodel Meadows. This was not a place of punishment or reward. It was the neutral ground, the afterlife for the ordinary. And what was it like? Homer in the Odyssey gives us a glimpse. When Odysseus performs a blood sacrifice, the shades swarm to drink it and gain momentary substance. But beforehand, they are described as withered, whispering, mindless things. The Asphodel Meadows are consistently portrayed as a gray, twilight plain, covered in the ghostly white flowers of the asphodel plant. The shades there have no memories, no strong emotions. They flutter aimlessly. It is the ultimate boring afterlife. No conflict, no joy, no sorrow, just a numb, endless existence in a featureless landscape. An eternity of mild, ambient dissatisfaction. No wonder Odysseus's mother, when she drinks the blood and recognizes him, says it is better to be a living slave than a king among the dead. The dominant experience of the Greek afterlife was, for the average person, one of profound, unending dullness. A cosmic waiting room with no exit and nothing to read.
Even the judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthys, and Aeacus, must have had moments of tedium. After the first few millennia, judging souls becomes routine. Another farmer lived an unremarkable life, minor deceit about a goat. Asphodel. Next. A potter, generally honest. Asphodel. Next. A soldier, killed bravely. Elysium. Next. The parade of humanity, with its slight variations on common themes, passing before them forever. The dramatic cases, the great villains and heroes, would be rare interruptions in a ceaseless procession of mediocrity.
Let us return to the world of the living, to the countless small cults and local traditions. Most people did not worship the Olympians in grand temples every day. Their religious life was filled with minor, household gods and spirits. The Kabiroi, for example, were obscure deities worshipped in parts of northern Greece and Samothrace. They were gods of the mysteries, but also, perhaps, of the forge.
Their origins and functions are so murky that even ancient writers were confused by them. Their rituals were secret, but one imagines they involved a lot of very specific, very repetitive actions known only to initiates. The power was in the secrecy and the precision of the boring ritual, not in any thrilling revelation.
Then there were the boundary stones, the horoi. These were not gods, but they were invested with divine significance. Hermes was the god of boundaries. Each stone marker between fields was under his protection. To move one stealthily was a religious and social crime. Think of the millions of such stones across Greece, each one a small, inert piece of rock, doing nothing but marking a line. For centuries, weathering slowly, witnessing nothing but the slow change of crops in the fields on either side. Its only moment of drama would be if a dishonest farmer tried to shift it under cover of night. And even then, the drama would be a small, local, petty affair, a quarrel over a few feet of barley. The stone itself, the focal point of the divine law, remained passive, a monument to staticity.
This love of categorization extended to the winds. The anemoi, the wind gods, were four brothers: Boreas, north; Notos, south; Zephyros, west; and Euros, east. They lived in a palace on the coast of Thrace. Now, controlling the winds seems dynamic, but consider their existence from an organizational perspective. They had shifts. Zephyros, the gentle west wind, was for fair weather and spring. Boreas, the north wind, brought winter cold. Their father was Astraeus, a titan of the dusk, and their mother was Eos, the dawn. So they are born from the daily, predictable meeting of dusk and dawn. Their work is cyclical, dictated by the seasons. They are not random, they are part of a system, a divine meteorological roster. Euros, the east wind, is the least personified of all, often just a direction, a cause of muggy weather. He is the boring, humid wind. His brother Notos, the south wind, brings storms, but even those are scheduled, in a way, for the rainy season. Their lives are a pattern, a rotation of duties, as fixed of the celestial clockwork. One can imagine them in their palace, waiting for their turn. Boreas grumbling about another long winter shift, Zephyros eagerly anticipating his spring debut. A workplace drama of elemental forces stretched over eons, with all the excitement of a rotating shift schedule at a vast cosmic factory.
Even love, the domain of Aphrodite, had its boring corners. Aphrodite had attendants, the Charites, Graces, and the Erotes, plural of Eros, love gods. But Eros wasn't just one god. Later tradition spawned many Erotes, with names like Pothos, longing, and Himeros, desire. They were like a divine sales force for love, each with a specialized emotional product. But what did they do on a slow day, when the mortal world was experiencing a lull in romantic activity? Did they practice their archery, polish their arrows, file reports on potential mortal targets? Subject, Daphnis, shepherd. Current status, content with his flock. Recommended action, light exposure to nymph Chloe in adjacent valley. Assign agent, Anteros, love returned, for reciprocal duty. The bureaucracy of affection.
Perhaps the most boring figure in all of Greek myth is a man who was not a king, nor a hero, but a philosopher. Or rather, a figure who embodied a philosophical concept so perfectly he became a warning against it. His name was Amales, and he is not well known because, fittingly, he is the personification of negligence and forgetfulness. He was a daimon, a spirit. His mother was Nyx, night, and his brother was Thanatos, death. His family was Sirius, night, death, sleep, Hypnos, dreams, Morpheus, doom, Moros.
and among them Amales, carelessness. He is the spirit of letting things slide, of not tending to the olive press so it cracks, of forgetting to make the small offering to Hestia, of putting off repairing the garden wall until the goat gets out. He causes no grand tragedies, only a slow accumulation of small failures due to inattention. He is the god of the unmended net, the slightly dulled tool, the unattended weed. His power is not in dramatic action, but in the absence of action, in the slow decay caused by not bothering. He is the patron deity of procrastination and minor oversights. His myth is the non-myth, the story that isn't told because nothing happened, because someone forgot to do the thing that would have made the story possible. He is, in essence, the god of boring causes for boring effects.
As we approach the edges of the known world in Greek myth, we find more marvels of the mundane. The Hyperboreans, a mythical people who lived in a land of perpetual sunshine and bliss beyond the north wind. They were said to live for 1,000 years in perfect health and happiness, feasting and singing. Sounds idyllic. But think of the narrative implications. A life with no conflict, no sickness, no struggle. 1,000 years of the same pleasant weather, the same feasts, the same songs. Wouldn't that, after a century or two, become excruciatingly dull? Where is the story in perfect, unbroken contentment? The Hyperborean life is the ultimate static paradise. No one writes an epic about a Hyperborean because nothing ever happens to them. Their existence is a divine endpoint of pure, eventless serenity, the most blessed and the most boring of all mortal fates.
Conversely, at the southern edge were the Ethiopians, a blameless people favored by the gods who feasted with them. Again, a people defined by their lack of drama, their sustained, uneventful piety. They are a narrative dead end. Even monsters had their routines. The Sphinx terrorized Thebes by asking a riddle and eating those who failed. But what did she do between travelers? Perched on that cliff, day after day, polishing her riddles, waiting. A lonely, repetitive job of interrogation and consumption. A monster with a daily grind. The Lernaean Hydra, before Heracles came, likely spent most of its time submerged in the swamps of Lerna, its multiple heads possibly bickering amongst themselves, waiting for the occasional cow or unlucky shepherd to wander by. Monster life, for the most part, was probably periods of long, dull lurking, punctuated by brief moments of violence. Consider also the concept of eight, a Greek term for delusion, folly, ruinous impulse sent by the gods. It's the clouding of judgment that leads heroes to make fatal errors. But eight wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just a bad day, a persistent low-grade confusion. The god responsible for distributing eight was perhaps one of the children of Eris. He would go about his work not with grand thunderbolts, but with subtle nudges, making a merchant misremember the price he agreed to, leading to a sour deal and a lifetime of petty resentment, making a wife misinterpret her husband's tired sigh as contempt, starting a cold silence that lasts for weeks. This is the boring application of divine folly, not the madness that starts a war, but the stupidity that ruins a perfectly good afternoon.
The daily life of the gods themselves, when not intervening in human affairs, must have been a strange mix of luxury and ennui. They ate ambrosia, which conferred immortality. They drank nectar. They listened to Apollo's lyre. But how many times can you listen to the same divine melody? How many feasts can you attend before the golden plates seem tiresome? They played games. In the Iliad, we see them sitting on Olympus, watching the war at Troy like a drama. It was entertainment. But when there was no great war, they likely gossiped, held councils about minor celestial adjustments, or simply rested. Hephaestus in his forge had constant work, but what of Hera? Her domain was marriage and women. The paperwork of divine matrimony must have been light. She spent a lot of time scheming against Zeus's lovers, but even that would have cyclical lulls. The gods experienced time differently. A decade was a blink, a century, a season. Their boredom would be a deep, cosmic, slow-moving thing, a lassitude measured in geological epochs.
Think of the Moirai, the Fates, Clotho, who spins the thread of life, Lachesis, who measures it, Atropos, who cuts it. Their work is the most fundamental of all, and it is, literally, a form of textile work. Spinning, measuring, snipping. For every life that has ever been, from the greatest hero to the most insignificant mayfly, they perform this trio of actions. A repetitive, mechanical process that undergirds all of existence. The rhythm of the spindle, the unspooling of the thread, the click of the shears, a sound as old as time and as monotonous as a heartbeat. They do not judge, they do not intervene, they just perform their function. Spin, measure, cut. Spin, measure, cut. A cosmic production line for mortality. There is no story in their work, only the endless, humming operation of destiny's machinery.
And so we find our way back to where we began, with the quiet hum, the administrative background of the cosmos. The Greek mythical world is not just a collection of thrilling stories. It is a vast, intricate, and largely boring system. For every Achilles, there are 10,000 anonymous soldiers who died on the plains of Troy, whose names are dust. For every Odysseus, there are countless sailors who made it home without incident, whose voyages were marked by favorable winds and routine navigation. For every divine affair, there were eons of celestial routine. This is the true gift of these boring myths. They remind us that the universe is mostly made of quiet places, minor deities, repetitive tasks, and uneventful stretches of time. The drama is the exception. The monotony is the rule.
So let this rule now enfold you. Let the image of Hestia's unchanging flame be the anchor for your thoughts. Let the endless gray plains of the Asphodel Meadows become the landscape of your mind. Let the slow, patient growth of a Hamadryad's tree measure the passage of your breathing. Let the list of the 50 Nereids become a counting chant that slows your heart. Galatea, Thalia, Simathoe, Spio, Klaus. Let the names, beautiful and meaningless, wash over you. Let the rhythmic blow of Triton's conch be the signal for your muscles to unclench. Let the meticulous ledger-keeping of the forgotten quartermaster of the Titanomachy organize your scattered thoughts into neat, unimportant columns. Imagine you are a shade, newly arrived at the Asphodel Meadows. The journey is over. The judgment was swift and unsurprising. There is no punishment here, no reward, just a soft gray light. The air is still, neither warm nor cold. Underfoot, the pale, ghostly flowers of the asphodel stretch in every direction
to a horizon that seems gently blurred. Other shades drift past, their forms translucent, their faces empty of expression. There is no need to speak, no desire to. You simply are, and you will be. Time has no meaning. A century is indistinguishable from a moment. You feel a gentle pull, and you drift with it across the plain. There is no goal. The drifting is the state of being. You see a low, misty hill in the distance. You do not move toward it. You simply find yourself, after a long while, upon it. The view is the same. Gray flowers, gray light, drifting shades. A soft sighing sound, like a distant breeze that never arrives. It is the sound of collective, gentle exhalation from a million lungs that no longer need air. It is the sound of rest, of profound, absolute cessation of effort. You are no one. You have done nothing. You are here, in the quiet aftermath of existence. And it is peaceful, deeply, utterly peaceful. There is nothing to remember, nothing to anticipate, just the gentle, endless now.
Your body is heavy on the bed, like a stone settling into soft earth. Your limbs are as weighty as lead, as immovable as the boundary stones of forgotten fields. Each breath is a slow tide, coming in, going out, measured by an unseen lachesis. In and out, a thread of air, measured, steady. Your eyelids are the curtains of a temple now closed for the night. The light behind them fades to the gray of the Asphodel Meadows. The sounds of the world, the distant rustle, the faint hum, are the whispers of the shades, meaningless and soothing. You are Periphas, the just king, your story already told, transformed into something simple and quiet. You are an eagle, not soaring, but perched on the sacred scepter, watching the world from a great, silent height. The details blur into patterns. The worries of the day are but the tiny, scurrying creatures far below, of no concern to you now. Your only duty is to be still, to guard this moment of rest. Your wings are folded. Your eyes are half closed. The wind murmurs past your perch, a constant, low sound. You are the flame of Hestia, a perfect, steady circle of light in a vast, dark hall. You do not flicker. You do not leap. You consume your fuel slowly, evenly. You give off a gentle, radiant heat that does not change. You are the center. Around you, the great hall of sleep stretches into shadows. But you are the fixed point, the unwavering heart. Everything else orbits your calm constancy. The air around you is still, warm, and safe. You are the hearth of the night, and all is well.
Spin, measure, cut. The thread of wakefulness is spun thin. It has been measured to its perfect length. And now, the gentle snip of Atropos's shears. A clean, quiet end. And in the silence that follows,
There is only the deep, dark, fertile soil of unconsciousness, where nothing happens and everything is restored. Sleep.